It's important to make the right decisions, like when to go for it on fourth down, or when to kick the field goal or go for the touchdown. It's also important to make the right insurance decisions too. That's why my office, Trey McAdams State Farm, is here to help you select the right protection at the right price. Our office will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages, so you'll know what to expect when the unexpected happens. With Trey McAdams State Farm, it's easy to make the right call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Proud sponsor of the Tennessee Vols.
Well, Tennessee gets its first ever playoff appearance after securing the 9 seed in the 12-team playoff format. Of course, they have a really tough road starting in Columbus against Ohio State. Paige Dower alongside Jimmy Hyams. I just think, let's talk initial reaction to Tennessee getting the 9 seed. It's a really tough road that they'll now face. If you beat Ohio State, then you're Rose Bowl, going to face Oregon, assuming that you, of course, take care of the first round win against Ohio State. But what's your initial reaction to facing the Buckeyes?
Well, my first reaction is a tip of the cap to Tennessee for getting in.
Yeah.
Secondly, Ohio State's a tough out. That's going to be a difficult game at Ohio State. Many people think Ohio State is as talented as any team in the country. They apparently spent more money on NIL than anybody. I keep hearing this figure of over $20 million. They're loaded at running back. They've got a solid quarterback. They're great at receiver. They're a very, very talented team. This is a tough, tough draw for Tennessee to go to Ohio State. I'm not talking about the weather. I'm talking about the talent.
Everyone's talking about the weather, yes.
Yeah, the talent is a concern. But I did find it interesting that ESPN analyst Kirk Herbstreit said that he thinks that when Ohio State takes the field, the fans might boo him, remembering the Michigan loss.
Yep.
They would boo Ryan Day, remembering he cannot beat Michigan. If that happens, what's the reaction of the Ohio State team? Now, I don't think that'll happen, but I thought, wow, that's an interesting way to put it. But if Ohio State is not mentally recovered from losing to Michigan, Tennessee's got a great shot. But I think Tennessee has a chance if it plays its best game, if Nico plays well, if Tennessee doesn't drop passes. I think the defense will hold its own. So I think it's, any matchup you get at this point is going to be hard, right? It's the 12 best, among the 12 best teams in the country.
I definitely think one side of the bracket, that road is a little tougher than the other side of the bracket.
Yeah. But going to Ohio State, that is not going to be easy. I'm looking forward to it. It's a marquee matchup. You got two unbelievable brands playing each other. Tennessee has rebounded to make itself relevant under Josh Heupel. Ohio State's been great against almost everybody, not named Michigan under Ryan Day. So I think you got two iconic football programs going at it.
And I think one thing that we should touch on before we move on to the non-emotional side of this seeding is, of course, the transparency or the confusion that people feel and the lack of transparency from the playoff committee and why, Ohio State and Penn State, why they're in the seeding that they are. Why is OSU still behind Penn State despite winning the head-to-head? And then you're like, well, Penn State, they were in the title game and they hung tough against undefeated Oregon, who is, of course, the conference champions for the Big Ten. Do you agree that Ohio State should be at the seeding that they're at and Penn State should be ahead of the Buckeyes?
No, I think Ohio State should be ahead of Penn State. I think Ohio State's a better team. They beat them head-to-head. Not only did they beat them head-to-head, where did they beat them? At Penn State.
Yep, on the road.
What else do you have to prove?
Yeah.
So given that they have the same record, now I understand the selection committee didn't want to look at Penn State and say, hey, we're going to penalize them. By the way, I don't remember them using the word penalize.
Yeah.
When they said we're not going to. What I heard them say is we value teams that play in conference championships, which gave them some wiggle room to where if they thought they needed to dump somebody lower, they could do that. But I think Ohio State should be ahead of Penn State based on their head-to-head and the eye test. I think Ohio State's a better football team than Penn State. So that's about the only thing I had issue with. I don't have issue with Ohio State ahead of Tennessee. Ohio State beat two teams in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And Tennessee didn't beat anybody in the top 10. They came close. Now, Alabama was 11.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. So, and that's 11. A really good win, beating Alabama. But Ohio State had two of them. So I can see Ohio State being ranked ahead of Tennessee.
At Wallace Real Estate, trust is more than just a word. It's been our foundation since 1936. Whether you seek backyard adventures or a quiet spot for your morning coffee, we understand what makes a house a home. Our agents are here to simplify your home journey and to lead you through the process, whether buying or selling. With Wallace Real Estate, you're getting more than guidance. You're gaining a local partner dedicated to bringing your dreams to life. Start your real estate journey at wallacetn.com.
I think the other thing is that you have to look at is Tennessee's in its first ever playoff appearance. They're doing so in Josh Heupel's fourth season at the helm. They got so incredibly close in 2022. If they could just hold on for the last couple of games of the season, you look at South Carolina and what happened there. But now they've finally done it. They're, one of the best 12 teams in the country. They've got a chance to play for a national championship, and we've heard them talk about it all season long, and Josh Heupel will say, this is the next step in our program. And, of course, they're ecstatic to be here. They're excited for the next opportunity in the new season to come.
Yeah, I guess you could look at that fortunate or unfortunate two ways. Fortunate that they got a 12-team playoff because they wouldn't be in it.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that 2 years ago it wasn't 12 teams because they would have been in that one.
Yeah.
But, I think what Heupel's done with this program, let's not forget that Tennessee was 3-7 when he took over. Let's not forget there was the NCAA cloud hanging over their head. Some 40 players left the program for a variety of reasons, and that includes signees that opted not to honor their letter and they went somewhere else. So that's a lot of people. And so he came in and did a marvelous job of turning this thing around, of establishing a culture, of getting an offensive identity. Now he's got a pretty darn good defense to go with that. So I like this team a lot. Now, can they beat the best teams in the country? Can they win 4 in a row? That's tough. That's tough for anybody.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they could, but I give them a puncher's chance against Ohio State and probably against just about anybody else they might play along the way.
Yeah, and they're just about a touchdown underdog against Ohio State. Do you think a lot of that has to do with obviously being on the road and Ohio State having a lot more recent experience in the playoffs and national championships?
I do. Yeah, I think that's a part of it. It would be interesting to see what the line would be if this game were in Neyland Stadium.
For sure.
And it might be a push 'em or maybe Ohio State by a couple of points.
Yeah.
But the home field is significant, and Tennessee has proven to be much better at home than on the road. I remember being asked a while back about, hey, Tennessee, the question was, can they win on the road? Well, of course they can. They're 7-9 on the road under Heupel. Now, can they win consistently on the road? That's a different question. They do have some really good road wins. They beat LSU 40-14 the same year LSU played for the SEC championship and won the West.
Yeah.
They played Pitt at Pitt, won that game in overtime, I believe.
Yes.
And Pitt was the defending ACC champion. So they have beaten some good teams on the road, but on the road they've laid some eggs too.
Arkansas, yeah, this season, and I think what's important about this road aspect is that's actually where Tennessee ended their season, on the road against Vanderbilt, and what was probably their most complete game of the season. And Josh Heupel earlier on Sunday talked about going into the playoffs with a freshman quarterback in Nico Iamaleava, and he says really his best season, his best performance has been at the end of the season, and that's what we saw against Vanderbilt. You and I talked at length about what Nico was able to do with the wide receivers. I think just having that as your most recent, for your recency bias, can only do great things for you in these next couple of weeks of preparation. Yeah,
and I expected Nico to get better as the season went. I thought a lot of this preseason hype was a bit of a disservice to him. There was almost no way he could live up to that. There was no way. I didn't think he should be put in a Heisman Trophy discussion because he hadn't done it enough. He played one bowl game and beat Iowa.
Yeah.
And Iowa wasn't really that good that day. And I give him credit. He played pretty well. But I think as the season went on, he got better. He needs some help from his receivers. They cannot drop footballs like they've done from time to time. But I think he really started showing composure. I think he saw the field better. I thought he was reading defenses better. I thought he was more decisive. I thought he ran better. Yeah. He was just a better quarterback by the end of the year. And I don't think just by a little bit. I think exponentially. So I think right now he's got a hot hand. He's playing well. He's pretty confident. And I think the coaches also are confident in him to where I don't know if they'll open up the playbook more, or at least they might be more aggressive with him. Yeah. When they're backed up inside their 10-yard line, they let him throw the football instead of handing off 3 times. So I do think I like where he is. I really like the defense. The defense has only had one game where I would say they didn't play well, and that was at Georgia. And Georgia, Carson Beck had the hot hand, and Tennessee didn't put pressure on him. So combination of things. But other than that, I think that the defense has played really well, and I think it'll hold up against Ohio State. I don't see Ohio State going out there and scoring 45 points against Tennessee.
Right.
So and then the offense just has to respond as well, which I think they can. And by the way, Ohio State has a really good defense. If you look at their rankings in the Big Ten, I don't know those stats right off the top of my head. I would bet you they're in the top 3.
Sure. And I think when you mentioned, the wide receiver connection and hopefully not dropping the footballs, I think that's where you have the cold weather angle come into the conversation because obviously we're not in Florida. Tennessee is not in the deep south. They still get cold weather. It still snows here. It was just, freezing temperatures last week. I remember leaving, Thompson Bowling Arena after the Syracuse game. It was 25 degrees. So it definitely gets cold here, but that was also at midnight. And with an 8 p.m. kickoff, you might get to those temperatures as well. I think that's where you get worried, like, the wide receivers dropping the ball if they have, cold hands. And I think that's why they're practicing early in the morning. They're trying to simulate this cold weather type of atmosphere as much as they can because as much as it does get cold here, it doesn't get cold like it does in Ohio consistently.
That's true. And that key word is consistently. So what's it going to be like that particular night? I don't know.
Yeah, it changes a lot. Being from Cincinnati, some days are really freezing cold and other days they're a little bit warmer. So,
but I don't think the cold weather should have much of an impact on Tennessee. You're right, it does get cold here. Tennessee hadn't played in as many cold weather games as Ohio State does in a given year. But I think
their one against Vanderbilt was in the afternoon, and you had the sun to keep you warm. At 8 o'clock, you are not having any warmth from the sun keeping you warm.
You won't. But I think that the cold weather should not affect the performance of a defense.
Right.
I don't know if it's going to affect the performance of Nico throwing the football. From Tennessee's perspective, you hope it doesn't affect the receivers catching the ball.
Right.
No, I think Tennessee's built for this. And the other thing is that when you play in cold weather, you like to have a good, solid run game.
And what does Tennessee have?
They led the SEC in rushing, and Dylan Sampson's one of the best running backs in the country.
Yep.
So, first-team All-SEC performer, which he deserved. So, yeah, I think Tennessee is built better to play in cold weather than the 2022 team was.
Interesting. Yeah, and I would say obviously because they're a much more run-heavy team this year. But seeing what we did against Vanderbilt, who knows? We might have flashes of 22 in that game. But yeah, Tennessee's in the playoffs, first ever playoff appearance, and it's a good time to be on Rocky Top with what basketball is currently doing and what we're getting ready to do with football. It's incredible.
We mentioned basketball. The men's basketball team be ranked number 1 probably, right?
Yeah, they should be.
I watched the Lady Vols, and they had a nice win against Iowa.
Number 17.
So that'll put them in the ranking. So, yeah, there are a lot of nice things going on the
Well, I actually talked about that in my show earlier today about the Lady Vols, if they'll be ranked. I said that there's an outside chance that they should be. You have a win against FSU and a win against Iowa, but I have a suspicion that the voters are wanting a larger sample size before they put the Lady Vols as a ranked team. Do you think that they'll be ranked in the Week 6 rankings, or do you think they'll have to play a couple more games?
Absolutely, they're going to be ranked. Okay. Because, at least in the poll that I saw, they were either 26 or 27.
Yeah, they received 16 votes a week ago, and then that's 7 more than they received the week prior. So they're definitely garnering attention.
Yeah, so if you're 26 or 27 and you get those 2 wins, you're going to move in. And plus the way they played, I think that's getting some attention from folks.
Yeah.
It's an interesting style
it is.
Of
it's
play.
Fun, yeah.
I would be shocked if the Lady Vols aren't ranked. And I'm not talking about 25. I think they could be as high as 20. I think they're going to jump in there.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm a little like, let's play into this underdog mentality a little longer. I like the edge it gives teams sometimes. But so if you want to learn more about the Lady Vols and how they performed against Iowa, I have that back on the homepage from our episode later today or earlier today. And then, so we'll continue to get ready for Tennessee football later this week when we hear from the team, I believe on Tuesday and Wednesday. So definitely stay tuned, and we'll talk to you guys later this week.